Welcome, race fans, to Pump the Brakes, the one, the only, the Cadillac of Formula One podcasts. I am your host, the Pitlane Patriot. The Australian Grand Prix is in the books. We've got a lot to discuss, both good and bad. And then to cap it all off, we will preview this weekend's Chinese Grand Prix. Plenty of great stuff to talk about. Let's get straight into it. All right, let's get into the actual racing side of the 2026 Australian Grand Prix. And outside of Cadillac, the headline's pretty simple. Mercedes showed up to the first race of a new era and punched everyone in the mouth. George Russell took pole on Saturday. Kimi Antonelli, the sophomore, made it a Mercedes front row. And then on Sunday, they converted that into a clean 1-2, with Charles Leclerc finishing third, Hamilton finishing fourth. So Mercedes 1-2, Ferrari 3-4. Lando Norris, the defending champion, came home fifth. Max Verstappen came in sixth, although he started at the back of the grid because of a crash during qualifying. Point is, Mercedes looked legit, Ferrari looked close enough, McLaren looked off, and Red Bull looks fast in flashes and messy almost everywhere else, the way you'd expect from a team with its own powertrain for the first time. Red Bull has its brand new, its own powertrain. What makes this result even more impressive for Mercedes is that this is not some sleepy lights to flag cruise where Russell just disappeared. Saturday gave us our first real shock of the season. Russell absolutely smashed qualifying. Antonelli somehow put the sister car on the front row right next to Russell. And after a huge FP3 crash, Isaac Hadjar put the Red Bull third. And Max Verstappen got dumped out in Q1 after a heavy accident, which never happens. So we had a lot of craziness during qualifying. On top of that, Gabriel Bortoleto, another one of our sophomores, got Audi into Q3. Now, this is really impressive. Audi is also a new team this year. They're not new in the way that we are. Cadillac is brand new. Audi came in purchasing a team. But they are using their own powertrain, which is very interesting that Gabriel Bortoleto, being so inexperienced himself, was able to take that brand new powertrain into Q3. Unfortunately, that's when they started to bump into some trouble, so he didn't set a time in Q3, so he positioned in 10th. Then we got to Sunday, and honestly, the opening phase of the race was the best advertisement possible for tuning in. Russell started from pole, but Charles Leclerc absolutely nailed turn 1 from fourth and stole the lead immediately. If you want to see the definition of big send down turn 1, even if you don't want to watch the highlights of the race, even if you don't want to watch any sort of racing on the actual track, I highly recommend you go back and watch the very start of this race from the point of view of Charles Leclerc. Because you can do that, you can watch any of the races from the point of view inside the cockpit of any of the drivers. So watch it from Charles Leclerc's point of view, and you will see a masterclass on how to start a race down into turn 1. The man went from fourth to first purely on merit. For the first several laps, Russell and Leclerc were kind of doing this dance that the Formula One organization absolutely loves, where one guy overtakes, then the other guy overtakes him, and back and forth they go. It's very flashy. It's very quick tune-in, oh, look what's happening kind of thing for casual fans. And it's one of the reasons why they made the regulations the way they are, in order to make racing a little bit more action-packed. Now, yes, I understand, for pure racing fans, this takes away from the pure strategy of the race and makes it more spectacle than race. You have to give up a little bit on one end to get from the other, and I think the balance that's being struck right now is pretty good. So, I'll take it. So yeah, Russell and Leclerc did this dance, and they just kept trading lead back and forth. The official race recap says the lead changed 7 times in the first 10 laps, which is insane by modern F1 standards. So even though Mercedes won comfortably in the end, the beginning of the race absolutely did not feel predetermined. Ferrari came out swinging, and for a little while it looked like they might actually have a sharper knife. But then the weekend got interesting, because it had one swing with one big strategic moment, Ferrari's virtual safety car. So Ferrari's VSC call in Australia basically came down to this. They thought the better move was to stay out and not pit in a situation where you would normally gain an advantage by pitting. Fred Vasseur, who is the team principal of Ferrari, said that Ferrari was targeting what they believed was the optimum strategy, and for them that meant extending the stint rather than taking the cheaper shot under their virtual safety car. His logic was that tire life was much stronger than expected, to the point where he joked that they could have done 300 laps on them. So Ferrari's view was, don't panic, keep track position, run longer. What this basically means is towards the end of the race, it could be argued Ferrari gave up on the win. They decided to stay in that 3-4 area. Lewis Hamilton, after the race, was excited, saying he loved the car, saying give him 5 more laps and he would have been on the podium. So Ferrari was confident. That's a big headline outside of Cadillac for this race.
Formula E on steroids.
And as far as the midfield, Ollie Behrman gave us a pretty awesome finish for Haas in 7th, which is a seriously strong opening result and suggests that Haas may have something real in this rule set. Arvid Lindblad, our sole rookie on the grid, scored 8th on his debut for Racing Bulls and became one of the youngest point scorers in F1 history. 3rd youngest ever, which is a hell of a way to introduce yourself. Gabriel Bortoletto finished 9th, went from 10th to 9th. He was playing with house money, so he did a really good job. There's a legitimately impressive debut weekend for Audi. So outside the headliners, Australia gave us proof that the rookie class and the new era midfield are going to be a pretty huge source of storylines. It's going to be a real good tight fight in the midfield. Now we have to talk about the actual elephant in the paddock, the 2026 regulations themselves. Because if you watched this race and thought, why does this kind of feel insane? Drivers noticed too. There were a ton of positioning changes during the new energy deployment rules and overtake mode. And multiple drivers came out of the race sounding like they just played a very expensive video game. Charles Leclerc literally compared the boost to Mario Kart mushrooms. Now, I will say, Charles Leclerc was also in a Pokemon commercial during the Super Bowl. So this is just me, but I think he's just got some sort of deal with Nintendo. So yeah, Charles, you're not fooling anybody with that. Max Verstappen said that this doesn't really feel like proper Formula One to him. Lando Norris, who I do not believe is going to repeat, I think definitely not repeat. He did not look very strong. McLaren in general did not look very strong. McLaren is going to struggle this year. That is my hot take. And George Russell, to his credit, was one of the more diplomatic racers and basically said that everybody needs to give the new era a chance before burying it after one race. But obviously you would say that when the race was won by you and was in your favor. That debate is going to matter all season long because Australia showed both sides of the argument. Yes, there was way more action, but a lot of drivers clearly said some of that action felt manufactured. Mercedes won the first battle of the new era. Ferrari proved that they're close enough to make this interesting. Verstappen reminded everybody he's still a problem, even on a terrible weekend. The rookie gave us a real reason to care, and the new regulations instantly became the most controversial character in the whole sport. So now, let's talk about our team Cadillac.
All in all, the headline for me is well done Cadillac and welcome to Formula One.
Yeah, they're going to look respectable, I think, for the first.
Cadillac finished 16th with Checo Perez, and yeah, VB retired early. But if you're judging this weekend only by the results sheet, you're missing the actual point. The real story is that Cadillac showed up to its first ever Formula One weekend looking like a real team. Not a gimmick. Not a parade float. Not some branding exercise that rolled onto the grid for photos and money and got embarrassed. They looked serious. They were organized. They were credible in Melbourne. And for a team that only got its entry confirmed about a year ago, that matters a hell of a lot more than whether they finished 15th or 14th. That's honestly the first big takeaway from the Australia race is that Cadillac passed our legitimacy test. So yay. Before the weekend even started, Graham Loudon was talking about how massive the build process would be, and how massive it's been just to get here. And Cadillac had already bought its first upgrades for its debut race, which is super impressive. This is not the behavior of a team that's showing up just to survive. This is a team that's already treating round one like part of a development war. And Friday also marked basically the first true real weekend moment for them. Because during testing, they've been limited in how much they've been able to run both cars, honestly. Like Checo and VB sort of alternated, but they did get to run both cars, but not as much as they'd like. Melbourne was the first time that Perez and Bottas were really living with the two cars, so that's really the headline. It's the first time that we actually went on two cars. So expecting both of them to finish was, it was hopeful, but it's a big ask. Was Friday messy? Absolutely, it was messy. Both cars lost their mirrors, which was hilarious. Perez lost the left and Bottas lost the right, so now we know what that feels like. And then in the afternoon, Perez had an afternoon wreck because of multiple separate issues. Cadillac's own reporting said that there were actually two separate issues on Checo's car, but both of them were unrelated. One in the fuel system, and then there was a hydraulic leak. So yeah, I mean, this is like growing pains, right? But we'll get through it. And Checo, he seemed like a guy who was expecting this sort of stuff. So no, this was not some flawless opening day where everything clicked, but that's why we manage our expectations. It looked like what a brand new F1 team looks like. It was fast moving, it was imperfect, it was a little chaotic, and there was learning in real time. The important thing is that they kept going, kept collecting data, and still managed 68 laps across the 2 practice sessions. And honestly, that's why I come away from Australia encouraged, because a bad Cadillac Friday did not turn into a disastrous Cadillac Saturday. They stabilized. They cleaned it up. They got through qualifying with both cars, and they did it in a way that seemed calm and methodical. And technically, we can always say that in its debut weekend, Cadillac F1 with both their cars out-qualified Max Verstappen. We stop the story right there. We don't go into detail. That's the truth. Anyway, they got through qualifying with both cars, and they did it in a way that seemed calm and methodical. And again, jokes aside, finishing qualifying with both cars, it's not a given. We didn't finish 21 and 22. We finished higher because there were cars that just didn't finish, including Max. So, yeah, it's a lot of good to come away from Saturday. So Saturday was something that I'm very, very proud of our team. We did really well, and we qualified. And we weren't crazy off the pace in qualifying. So a hot lap out of that Cadillac car is possible. We knew that from Saturday. There were also like little details in qualifying that matter if you're trying to judge whether this thing has bones. Graham Loudon said that the plan had been to do 3 runs, but the red flags had disrupted that, so 2 runs was what they did. He also said Bottas lost a lot of time on the back straight, and they needed to understand why they didn't get the full package out of the car. So basically what that means is Bottas was expecting a certain level of performance. I mean, his expectations are also tempered, but he was expecting a certain level of performance that the car just wasn't giving, and the team didn't understand it either. So this is a good thing, right? Happening in race 1, finding out that the car isn't performing up to what the drivers were expecting. So now you have this sort of dynamic where it's, okay, well, we got to get on the same page. So let's see what the problems are now, right? Then we get to race day, and I actually think this is where the weekend became meaningful for Cadillac fans. Perez started 18th, finished 16th, bringing the Mac 26 home in the team's first ever Grand Prix. The Mac 26 being the name of our Cadillac car, the Mario Andretti Cadillac 2026. The Mac 26, named after Mario Andretti, because this whole thing started with him. If you don't know the story, you can take a look back at my previous episodes, because I covered the whole thing. So Bottas started 19th and retired on lap 16. Yes, that sucks. Did we want both cars to finish? Yes. Did we hope both cars would finish? Yes. Did I personally think both cars would finish? Yes. Unfortunately, Bottas did not finish. Bottas was out in lap 16. If you watch the race, you could tell that it wasn't a driver error. There was some sort of mechanical issue that, given Bottas' experience, he was able to spot. They were able to get on communication and retire the car. Bottas himself called it a fuel system problem. So yeah, only one car finished. That's not ideal, but Checo got the car to the flag. Now, that also wasn't ideal because Checo's pace was way behind. I believe it was a total of 3 laps behind in the race, but it did finish. So I'm going to be real with you, my fellow Cadillac fans. I never said this was going to be easy, and it's probably not going to get easier, but it will get more fun. The problem here is we know that we have a car with the technology to operate in an F1 race. That's good, but we don't know if we can sustain over the course of a race. Whether that be, can the team sustain 2 cars? The vast majority of this rebuild was 1 car. From the beginning, when they got their bid, they were designing 1 car. They created models of 1 car. And then when you add an identical car to the mix, things get a lot more complicated. So Cadillac basically discovered this in their first weekend. And that's a good thing. So the team's going to have to get on board with figuring out 2 cars. And we're going to have to figure out pacing. But it's good to know the problems now. I like the tone that both the drivers had afterwards. Perez basically said, great first race is done. And honestly, as a Cadillac fan, there was definitely something kind of beautiful about the emotional backdrop of the weekend. Graham Loudon said on Saturday that that day was the 1-year anniversary of Cadillac receiving its Formula One entry. 1 year. Like, that's nothing in Formula One terms. Teams spend years and years building towards competence. And Cadillac had 1 year from this past Saturday to get to a car to qualifying, and both cars qualified. This is the important thing, guys. See everything in perspective. Cadillac didn't have a bid a year ago, and a year later they qualified 2 cars. And one thing I really love is that the people around the team are not talking like this is some cute little underdog side project. Loudon said after the race that he felt Cadillac had earned its rivals' respect, and that was one of the first things he wanted. And I love that. I like that fire from Graham Loudon. He was like, one of the first things I wanted coming into this paddock was I wanted to make sure that the other team saw us. Like, not, oh, okay, you want to join in because this is starting to get big. But they saw us as something that could be a threat. And that's important. Like, we need to be able to establish ourselves on this grid. Because an 11th team joining brand new, it's not just going to intimidate the other teams. They're not intimidated. They don't care. Not until you show them something. And what we've done is we have shown them something. We've shown them we can show up. We've shown them we can build a car, build 2 cars. Maintaining those 2 cars, I'm not so sure. But we can build those 2 cars, and we have the technology and the capability to run and compete with the best. So we did our first step, guys. We had our first race, baby's first steps. Now let's get walking, and so we can start running. But one day at a time, one step at a time. What we expect from here on out is progress. We expect both cars to finish our next race. We expect better lap times. We expect more cohesiveness from our team. Our team's cohesiveness is not there. We expect these things, but we temper our expectations, and we enjoy the ride. Go Cadillac. Next up, Formula One heads straight to Shanghai for the 2026 Chinese Grand Prix. And this one matters immediately because it's the first sprint weekend of the season. That means just one practice session, then a sprint qualifying, sprint race, and then normal qualifying, normal race. Mercedes comes in with the momentum after that Australia 1-2, and there's already a feeling that Shanghai's mix of huge straights, fast sweepers, and better battery recovery could suit them up again. Ferrari gets an instant shot at redemption after that virtual safety car in Melbourne. McLaren is under pressure after admitting that they have a lot of work to do, and Red Bull needs to really show up, especially with Max. It's going to be a great race weekend, and I'll see you right back here next week to go over everything. Pitlane Patriot, out.